Good morning, all, and welcome to today's operator meeting. My name is Sienna, and I will be your host today. As a reminder, all questions will be answered at the end of all presentations, but please feel free to put them in the chat as they come to you. Additionally, if you have any questions that do not relate to today's topics, but relate to previous operator meetings topics, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will try to get to them today. If not, someone will reach out to you. Thank you so much. With that being said, first up, we have Dan. Dan, take it away.
Morning, everyone. I'm Dan Trone. I'm the ECMC Cumulative Impacts and Emissions Specialist. Going to be presenting today on a guidance document that we are hoping to release soon, which is the Cumulative Impact Analysis Guidance. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay, so as most folks know, we had a rulemaking in December, or that went into effect December 2024. That was our cumulative impacts rulemaking that took effect. After that point, all OGDPs submitted after that date were required to include a cumulative impact analysis as an attachment. This is a comprehensive document that assesses the impacts of your proposed operations in the context of all the other impacts that are happening in that area. Rule 315B provides content requirement for these documents. And so this guidance document that we've been putting together, it really follows the rule outline, and then tries to provide some I guess just recommendations on some things in the rules that aren't clear, or provides data sources for certain things. This is this is the first draft of this document, so we are looking forward to operators starting to use it and getting feedback from you. It is also quite long, so we will come back to the operator meeting in December, and which will hopefully give you a chance to use it and digest it and provide some input to us. We'll say that the recommendations in this guidance will apply to cumulative impact analyses that are submitted after the guidance is issued. We're not going to hold, the cumulative impact analyses that we currently have on hand to these standards, though. Those documents will obviously still need to meet the rule requirements. Okay, so there's a few other guidance documents that we put out this year related to cumulative impact analyses. Those would be the area of evaluation guidance that we put out earlier this year, and then most recently put out some guidance related to the plain language summaries and some associated templates. So this guidance document doesn't go into a lot of detail on those points, since there's already existing guidance, but does provide reference and links to those two other documents. All right, jumping into the content. So the cumulative impact rules require preparation of maps, usually many maps, just because of the amount of information that's requested. In this guidance, we recommend that you prepare multiple maps just to make it easier to interpret and read the map content that's required. We're also requiring or recommending that you kind of insert the maps throughout the document so that they're nested with the resource topic that they kind of cover, that the maps cover. So for example, if you've got a map showing surface water bodies and public water system intakes as required by the mapping rule requirements, we're recommending nesting those in the water quality section of the cumulative impact analysis. Alternately, what we often see from operators is that all the maps are just included as an appendix to the document, which is totally fine. We also provide some guidance on where to find the information that we're asking for in some of these rule requirements. So, for example, you're supposed to show all the public water system intakes within the area of evaluation. Those map layers are available on our GIS online platform. And then we show all the, kind of ways to get to those data layers and what you need to turn on to get to those. All right, so for past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future developments, this is really a core component of a cumulative impact analysis and the concept of cumulative impacts in general. So you really have to understand which resources may already be nearing a critical, unacceptable level of impact to be able to determine if the proposed operations have the potential to like tip the balance in that resource condition. I stole this kind of simple equation from the NEPA world. Um, I think it just really clearly and simply explains what cumulative impacts are. You're really adding, the impacts of what you're proposing to do to impacts that already exist or are expected to exist from future development, and that gets at this idea of cumulative impacts. Um, so we're asking about, discussion of past impacts. We're not asking, this does not need to be comprehensive. Really, the focus here should be on um, the events and sources which have been or continue to be kind of the main driver of adverse impacts in the area of evaluation. So, for example, think about like there's a large dairy farm in the area of evaluation, probably warrants a greater level of analysis about like odor impacts than maybe there's a parking lot paving project that happened 5 years ago. It was a discrete event, probably caused some odors, but probably more important to talk about the more impactful um, development in the area of evaluation. Let's see. Okay, some other rule requirements, specific rule requirements related to past, present, reasonably foreseeable future developments. Um, so a listing here of what else is required. I want to make some notes here, and the guidance goes into some details on these. So for the EnviroScreen data, currently our rules, our 100 series rules require the use of EnviroScreen 1.0. Just wanted to remind folks, we just went through statutory alignment rulemaking, which will go into effect at the end of October. And part of those updates will be to update the reference to EnviroScreen 2.0. So that will be the information data source that you'll be using after October 30th. And we will update the guidance after that point to remove the reference to EnviroScreen 1.0. And then these two other CDPHE analyses or documents, wanted to provide some more information regarding those. We get questions about them a lot. So the environmental equity and cumulative impact analyses, none of these exist yet. CDPHE is in the process of choosing the first community that's going to be the subject of one of these analyses, and is anticipating that the first one won't be available until late 2027. So this is going to be not applicable for all OGDPs until that time. And then for the EJ, the environmental justice summaries, so that's a document that's prepared as part of the Air Pollution Control Division permit application, which operators apply for after the OGDP is approved. So these often wouldn't be available unless your OGDP encompasses an existing location where an environmental justice summary was prepared. Yep. So guidance provides some more information on those points. All right, getting into avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures. So the guidance document doesn't go into a lot of detail on the rule requirements for BMPs. The rule subpart is pretty prescriptive about what you need to include. What we do provide is some kind of general guidance about how we'd like to see those BMPs and enhanced systems and practices listed. So we are recommending that the entire full list of BMPs and ESPs for the entire OGDP be included as an appendix to the cumulative impact analysis. Um, we are requesting that it be put in the form of a bulleted list rather than a table. That was a request from one of our work groups. Um, and then just to make it clear, what the BMP is for, we recommend kind of nesting those and grouping those BMPs together by resource impact that they are targeting. So all your air quality BMPs should be, you know, kind of together and labeled as such. If you do include a comprehensive list of mitigation measures, as we are, recommending, there's no need to repeat those BMPs throughout the document. The rules require you to list them kind of multiple times, but um, you can just reference back to this comprehensive list if you have it. I will say that in um, some of the resource topics, so this would be noise, odor, wildlife, soils, and vegetation. There's kind of an additional requirement to make sure you include an evaluation of how those BMPs will avoid, minimize, or mitigate impacts to resources. So just make sure you discuss that rather than in addition to listing the BMP itself. Let's see. Oh yeah, and there's some additional BMP requirements for locations that are within half a mile of an residential building unit, high occupancy building unit, school facility, or child care center that is within a DI community. Um, this isn't going to apply to every location, so I just wanted to note here that in the guidance we recommend that if there's a rule requirement that doesn't apply to your location, that you state that affirmatively in the CIA, and that just helps those who are reviewing the document ensure that you've considered and addressed all of the rule requirements. Okay, so this is the resource impact descriptions. This is really the core of the cumulative impact analysis, the meat and potatoes, and of the guidance itself. Um, And here we provide some general guidance on how to write, robust impact descriptions that really convey uh, in real world terms what the impacts are going to be. Part of that is using concrete language whenever you can and avoiding using vague impact terms like short term, adverse, direct, indirect, whenever possible by themselves. It's okay to use these words. Um, they just kind of don't mean anything by themselves. So whenever you can provide like real world grounding to those terms, we're encouraging that. So rather than saying short term, if you know that the impacts are going to last 2 to 3 weeks, say that. Um, we also want these to be, you know, these documents should be kind of grounded in science and facts. So wherever possible, want you to cite evidence, data, and studies wherever possible to support your impact claims. Um, let's see, the guidance, we tried to provide some examples of some potential impacts to consider. Um, so, for example, for air quality, things you should be thinking about are like airborne dust from vehicles and ground disturbance. So try to provide that for every resource topic. And then again, we try to provide data sources where, where can you find the information to address these rule requirements? Um, one of the ones that I often see is missed or is not answered completely is this question about water quality attainment status. There's a whole list of things it asks for. Good news is all that information is available from a single data source. It's CDPHE's segmentation map. And there's a companion metadata guide that you can use to decode the information in the attribute table that will help you answer and provide the information for this rule requirement. Let's see. Okay, so just a last note here to avoid redundancy. Um, so, these documents, again, the rule kind of asks for the same information in a couple different places. You don't need to restate the BMPs and ESPs each time. Again, if you've included them in a comprehensive appendix. Same with the discussion of impacts from past, present, reasonably foreseeable future development. If you've already covered that above in the section of the rule that requires that discussion, you don't have to talk about that for each of the resource topics, but make sure to reference back to them. All right, this is my last slide. Just some other information that's required to be part of a cumulative impact analysis. Discussion of transportation corridors, analysis of evaluations and information, which is just a brief summary of the unmitigated impacts identified elsewhere in the cumulative impact analysis, and then any other information necessary to evaluate cumulative impacts. So for this additional information piece, we kind of explain like what that could entail in the guidance. So for example, our rules don't require consideration of historic properties. But say you have a location that, whose area of evaluation includes a property that is listed or eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, and you find that out in the course of your research for the cumulative impact analysis, you might consider discussing that and including that in your document. All right, and that's it. I'm excited to get this guidance document out there. Again, this is the first version of this guidance document, and we welcome your feedback on it. I'd like to thank the Cumulative Impacts team and other ECMC staff for their review and content contributions to this guidance document. And as always, if you have questions about your specific cumulative impact analysis for your OGDP, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to your lead location assessment specialist for assistance. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Next up, we have Melissa.
Thanks, Sienna, and thanks to everyone who's joined today. I'm Melissa Sarborn, one of the senior permit and completion specialists on the permitting team. And we're going to be talking about the pooling and the permitting process and some changes that have gone into effect this year. So today I'm going to review how the pooling amendment in SB 24-185 impacts the processing of applications for permits to drill, also known as Form 2s. Everything I'll be discussing today is laid out in an operator guidance document, which was updated earlier this year. There is a link to that guidance in the next slide. Actually, it's at the bottom of this slide too. Wait, sorry, we've advanced one slide. Here we go. Sorry about that. So the revised statute now requires, under certain circumstances, that a pooling order be in place before drilling or production operations commence. However, we've identified 6 scenarios which will allow the Form 2 processing to move ahead and not wait on pooling orders. And these scenarios, which I'll be talking through in the next few slides, either don't trigger the requirements or satisfy the requirements of the revised statute. If you can't tell, this process can be kind of confusing, and we are happy to address general questions today during the Q&A portion of the meeting. However, for specific questions, we'd request that those be taken offline, and you can reach out to myself, your assigned permitter, if you're an operator, or the permitting supervisors, Penny Garrison and Misty Mason, or of course, the hearings manager, Elias Thomas. Okay, so what's changed? Pursuant to the Colorado Revised Statute, as of this year, under certain circumstances, an approved pooling order is required for drilling and production operations. Specifically in terms of the permitting group's processing of Form 2 applications for permits to drill, or APDs. If a pooling order is needed under the revised statute, the permitting group will hold the Form 2 APDs until the pooling application is approved. And our assumption is that a pooling order is needed. However, unless there's a caveat here, if the application lands meet specific scenarios, the permitting group will not hold the Form 2s, provided the operator adds a comment on the Form 2 Submit tab stating the applicability of one of these scenarios. We're going to talk through those scenarios. There's a link here at the bottom of the page to the guidance document that I mentioned earlier. And we're going to pull heavily from that guidance document to talk about these 6 scenarios in the next slides. And so when will these Form 2 APDs not be held pending a pooling order? That's the important question. So for all of these slides, there's a lot of words. Again, I pulled this from the operator guidance document that Elias has put together. I don't want to read all these words. So what I'm going to do is just give you the highlight for each of these scenarios. All of these slides will be available after the meeting as well. So for scenario 1, which is a pooling order is not needed because all minerals are leased or there is a declaration of pooling already filed in the county records. Under the first bullet, there's a little bit more information. And then the second bullet is really key. If this applies to your application lands for your Form 2s, this is our recommended language. So obviously, add in the relevant information for your Form 2s on here. And that comment does need to be submitted on every single Form 2. If it's a 24 well pad, that comment needs to be on each of the Form 2s, not just one. And if that's on the Form 2s, then receipt of that recommended language is sufficient for the permitting group to go ahead and process the Form 2s. We will not be holding those Form 2s pending the pooling application. So the next scenario, again, the same format. Second scenario, if there are no unleased mineral interest owners in the DSU, no pooling order is needed to satisfy the revised statute. Again, the second bullet point has our recommended language to be included on the Form 2. And once we get that language, that comment, that is sufficient for us to go ahead and process the Form 2s. We won't be holding Form 2s with this comment. If we continue, the third scenario is a derivation of the second scenario, but here we have the instance where there are no unleased mineral interests owned by local government. And we should note that those unleased mineral interests owned by a local government would have to be in that local government's jurisdiction. So for an example, if we're talking about some unleased acreage owned by Greeley, it would have to be within the Greeley city limits, not in unincorporated Weld County. Again, the same situation with the recommended language here. It's in bullet point 2. But also there is a caveat here in the third bullet that any non-government unleased mineral interest would also have to be addressed as applicable. So the red box here says, assuming there are no unleased mineral interest owners in the unit that have rejected an offer to lease, receipt of the above is sufficient to release and process the Form 2s. So again, as soon as we get this, the recommended language is in here, the other instances don't apply, we'll be able to continue processing the Form 2s and they won't be held for pooling. All right, the next scenario, we're halfway through. Scenario 4 is the case where there are no actively rejected lease offers within the statutory 60-day period. And the key point to call out with this scenario is that non-response is not the same as rejection. So non-response would fall under this scenario, but an actual rejection means that the Form 2s would have to wait for a pooling order to be approved. And again, our recommended language is in bullet point 2. The red box, again, just calls out the importance of recognizing the difference between non-response and rejection. And then if we move on to scenario 5, scenarios 5 and 6 are pretty straightforward. For 5, a pooling order has already been issued for the DSU, but a subsequent pooling application has been filed, and that subsequent application requests only to subject additional working interest owners to the original pooling order. And again, no unleased mineral interest owners in the DSU. Again, recommended language, bullet point number 2, and receipt of the above is sufficient. We will not hold Form 2s waiting for a pooling order when we have this comment. And then the last scenario is scenario 6. Similar to the previous one, the unit has already been pooled and the Form 2s are being submitted for additional permits. Recommended language is included here, and the receipt of the above is sufficient for us to begin processing the Form 2s. Like I said before, if you have any questions as to which of these scenarios apply to your lands, you can reach out to the people I mentioned, myself, the permitting people, or Elias. The final slide here really emphasizes the point. Um, if none of the previous 6 scenarios are noted on the submitted Form 2s, the permitting group will hold the Form 2s until a pooling order is approved. So our baseline assumption, if we get a Form 2 and there's none of these previous 6 comments, our assumption is these are to be held pending a pooling order. So the onus really here is 100% on the operator to communicate this on the Form 2 so that we know what's going on. If you have, again, specific questions relating to this, please reach out to the permitting team. You can also reach out to Elias if you have more detailed questions on the pooling process. And like I said earlier, we're happy to take general questions, but if it's a very specific question relating to a DSU and which pooling scenario might apply, we'd actually take that offline. And that is it. Thank you, and thank you to Elias for pulling together that operator guidance document and working with me to get these slides pulled together.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Next up, we have Jessica. Excuse me. Next up, we have Elise. I apologize.
No worries. Thank you, Sienna. And thanks everyone for joining this morning. I'm Elise Devine. I'm the UIC Program Coordinator, and I'll be talking about produced water reporting. Speaking to data accuracy, I know that all of you are aware of our increased produced water reporting requirements, including the water disposal location. That's what I'll be focusing my discussion on today. We have, as an agency, been combing through the data, taking a closer look at Form 7s, Form 26s, and other forms. And looking at the last couple of years of data, we've noticed some significant instances of misreporting, and I wanted to address those today. One thing that we've noticed as we've combed through the data is we've noticed that when operators are reporting the water disposal location, they're actually reporting water being sent to locations that are closed. Now, I'm not speaking about instances where you may have reported it while the facility was actually active. The facility was closed even like before your report date. So we've seen some significant instances of that being done. We have also seen instances of operators reporting to abandoned locations, which, in the field, there's really no justification for that. For reporting to an abandoned location, there is no active equipment on site, no disposal wells on site. So we've noticed that. We have also noticed operators reporting to spill or release facility IDs, which that's not a part of the guidance. That is not what is prescribed. It is not what should be happening. So we've noticed that. And we've also noticed operators reporting to lease locations as opposed to a UIC facility or a location that houses a UIC facility or things that are recommended in the guidance document. We have not seen that. We have seen occurrences of lease locations being used on the Form 7. And also stepping outside of the UIC world, looking at disposal at commercial facilities that don't require underground injection, we've also seen operators who are reporting in-state disposal using a code that is not in our guidance document. We do in our template, in our Form 7 template, we have a list of location IDs that should be used if you're reporting out of state, but for in-state, there are specific instructions about what to do in that case. And this is not a number that our agency has placed in the guidance to say, hey, this is what you should use. So really what I'm speaking to is the importance of combing through your data, looking at what you're submitting, what is being submitted on your behalf to ensure that you are indeed adding accurate information. Like we're trying to support the produced water reuse and recycling efforts, and our database is only as good as the information that is within it. And so it is important that you just comb through your information, go through your data, go through your submittals. And if it's necessary, if you are using commercial disposal, you may need to have a conversation with your operator who's disposing of the water for you to determine what what changes have been made, what is the most accurate or most updated location where the water may be going. Also, I recommend that you pay close attention to the guidance documents that are on our website as well for Form 7 produced water reporting. Look at the template, make sure that you are aligning with that. And that's really all I wanted to discuss today. We may be reaching out to some operators regarding this issue with the in-state reporting using this 999005 code. But I just admonish all of you to take a look at your processes and take a look at your submittals to ensure that we are getting the most accurate information. And that's all I have. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Elise. Next up, we have Hunter.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Hunter Pickrell. I'm an area engineer around Southern Weld County. I just wanted to provide a quick reminder that Rule 419 requires all wells to have an annual braid and head test completed and submitted. There is a tool within web forms operators can use to audit their wells and check for compliance with the annual test submission. Additionally, there's a tool on ECMC's website to search for braid and head test submissions. We have braid and head monitoring, testing, mitigation, and reporting guidance on our website. If you have any questions, please reach out to your area engineer. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter. And before we get to our last presenter, please start putting your questions into the chat so we can get through them in a timely manner. With that being said, Jessica, you're up next.
Good morning. Thank you, Sienna. Yeah, I just wanted to present real quick on language access. We ran into a couple issues recently as we've been kind of going through the process. And we just wanted to clarify the compliance with the language access requirements of the rules and just kind of going based off of what our statement basis of purpose has intended to say, making sure that we focus on each language spoken at home by the 5% of the census block residents. So the reason we've kind of run into this issue is that we've seen some operators report the percentage on English literacy rather than languages spoken at home. And we want to clarify and honestly give you a real world example. In my case is a lot of homes who are bilingual. There are some generations that speak English better than others. And so just to make sure that we're creating a fair language access, if it says a language spoken at home, whether it's Spanish or any other language, that's the requirement and the percentage that we're taking rather than the English literacy, because that's self-reported and sometimes that may be inaccurate and they might not be able to understand the technical information that is shared during the OGDP process, CAP process. And in this case, there's several notices that go out related to OGDPs and geothermal. So we want to make sure that that's represented fairly. And so these are the rules that it's relevant to. What it starts with is all written information provided in the languages spoken by 5% or more of the population, which is relevant to Rule 303, 304, 309, 314, 1304, and 310. We just want to make sure that that certification is accurate. And so moving forward, any application submitted after 10/14/25 were reviewed under this interpretation. So if your OGDP CAP geothermal application triggers this compliant, making sure that you're in compliance with this rule, it will be, again, language spoken at home and not English literacy proficiency. Applications that have already passed completeness as of 10/14 today will not be impacted. And for applications that have been submitted but not yet past completeness as of 10/14, please reach out to our LAS team and our community liaison team for a discussion. If the operator has not sent out materials triggering these rules yet, apply this guidance to determine whether translation is necessary. If materials have already been sent out, discuss with LAS and CL. And I want to clarify that this is also very different than the linguistic isolation that is used in the DI mapping tool. That is used to determine if a census block group is in a disproportionately impacted community. This is specifically in terms of doing a little extra work and going into, for example, a resource that we recommend is the census.gov to determine if that census block group falls in that criteria of more than 5% of the community speaking more than one language spoken at home. So that is all on my end. If you have any questions, please let me know. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So far, I only see one question in the chat from Rachel. Should all of the BMPs for the entire OGDP be included or just the ones that apply to the resources discussed in the CIA? Daniel, I believe this is a question for you.
Yep, I can answer that. So in the guidance document, we do recommend including the full list of BMPs for the entire OGDP in that appendix to the cumulative impact analysis. And that just makes sure that ensures that we're not working with different lists of BMPs across the OGDP application. And then I'll just reiterate, organization is really important. Make sure that you're identifying which measures relate to which resource, or and then maybe for those that aren't specifically relevant to the CIA, you kind of put those in a different part of this appendix list of BMPs, just so we are able to make sure that you're meeting the rule requirements.
Thank you, Daniel. It doesn't appear we have any additional questions. As you can see on the screen, there is no operator meeting next month as the second Tuesday falls on Veterans Day. So the following meeting will be on Tuesday, 09 December. As a reminder, all of the operator meeting content will be uploaded by the end of this week. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Have a good day and thank you for attending today's operator meeting.